They need you there, Don Carlo, to work out all their technical problems.
That's what the grandchildren are for.
I don't know why mine says Rocky Mount Ward. I guess it's because we were doing Zoom meetings from our ward. Anyway, I don't know how to put my name in it.
Yeah, you can change that.
Where do I go to change it?
Let's see. I think there's a drop down next to your mute button, and in here somewhere you can change. I don't see it, but I've changed mine in the past.
It's next to it's in the top right corner. There's the drop down menu. And renames on the bottom. Name yourself something good, Charles.
Hi, Mary. Yeah, you need to change your name there too. To Mary Liang, right? You can add your husband's name there. Doesn't look like they've sat down to eat yet.
I guess they have those muted because I'm not hearing any noise from the reunion.
Yeah, because there was at the beginning when they first came online, there was noise, so they must have set their mute. There's Mary with the name Mark Lang on it.
Mary, you're muted right now. Unmute yourself if you want to talk to us.
Yay. There you go. Yes. Hi, Mary.
Hi.
Thomas Lang, the ayes have it.
Yeah. So, Keith,
Yes.
you look older and wiser.
Yes, I'm looking older, but I'm looking at a lot of old people.
Yeah, you are. Yeah, for sure. And there's good old Chuck. Muted.
I thought everybody looked old when I saw the videos, but when I look in the mirror, I see an old man in that mirror too.
Yeah, it's terrible, isn't it?
Well, you were paired up with Sister Moulton at one point in Milano.
Me?
Oh?
No, I was with Sister Moss and Sister
Okay.
Giles in Milano.
Okay. Well, I remember Sister Moulton too.
I remember her as well, but we were never companions.
I see. And now you've got a different companion.
Yeah, that's right.
How's that working out for you?
It's good. It's good. The Lord brought us together and we're behaving ourselves and being happy.
A big change of life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. There he is.
What do you think, Mark?
Oh, she's great. She's marvelous.
Well, we've always known she's great.
I paid them a lot for that.
Oh. Yeah.
We definitely were supposed to meet. We definitely were supposed to meet.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad to hear it.
One of those patriarchal blessing predictions that came to pass 51 years after the blessing was pronounced.
Woo.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So great to be able to join by Zoom. I thought I wouldn't get to participate at all. I love this.
Right.
See each other and join in a little bit.
Yeah, I guess they've got on the Darcy Mott, they've got a camera there set up where people are coming in and putting on name tags. And the one with Paul Carter looks like it's just showing the whole room.
Yeah.
So Keith, where are you living now?
Kirtland, Ohio. You
Oh.
heard of it?
I've heard of that.
Yeah, they've got a temple here, and you don't even need a recommend to get in,
Yeah.
but you have to pay $10. You know,
Oh, okay.
the community of Christ owns the church, and they need to keep it up, so they charge for entrance.
Well, they don't charge tithing to their members, do they?
I don't know.
They would if they could get, is it a $10 fee or a $10 suggested donation?
I guess it's a donation.
I don't know, because when I was there, it would seem like, which was 20 years ago, it was probably voluntary.
Yeah,
But they didn't let you in if you didn't pay it, right?
they probably still would. It's just, you know,
Yeah.
we don't mind paying to go in because it's such a lovely temple and they keep
Right.
it up nicely. But
Right.
the senior missionaries that work around this area also help to maintain the grounds and go in and clean all the benches and everything. So they really do help. And
That's
so
great.
the community of Christ, you know, says, oh, we certainly could use the help. And of course, you guys want to use the temple sometimes, and we'll allow that. And we had a big priesthood meeting inside and had another big missionary conference, zone conference in there. And
Cool.
they sang the Spirit of God, and they went to the four corners just like they did when it was dedicated. And boy, the sound, it was surround sound. It was awesome.
Bluetooth.
Beautiful.
Bluetooth connected.
All my teeth are kind of yellow, they're not blue.
Mhm.
So it's fun living in this area. I'm still working full time, but we're certainly doing service and helping out. Maybe we're working more in the service side than even the senior missionaries here. I don't know.
That's good for you.
Yeah, well, I don't golf, so hey,
You gotta have something to do, right?
see, there you go.
I used to golf, but I used up my allowed strokes, so I quit.
Ah.
He's a real jokester.
Oh boy. Well, that should keep things going because you both have jokes all the time.
Yeah, yeah. We don't compete, but
No practical jokes.
not many. I think he learned better.
Okay. I see more old people are coming in.
That's why I didn't want to come, because, you know, I might not qualify.
Oh boy. Well, you know, the Jorgensen said we'd have another reunion if they were still around in 5 more years. Are they planning on checking out? Is that why they're having this dinner?
They're calling this an interim reunion.
Yeah, yeah. It makes you wonder because, you know, if we're getting older, they must be getting older as well. And
Not much, though. They were so young.
He mentioned that when I talked to President Jorgensen that Elaine's not doing really great with health right now.
That's too bad.
So I don't know any details. He shared that with me.
Well, she's lived a long time and given lots of service. So
and played the flute.
that's right. So is President Jorgensen in there?
Yeah, you could see him there. He's talking to the people right there. You see the picture? It says Paul Carter. There,
Yeah.
there, he just came invisible. See him right in the center?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Did Paul mention what time President Jorgensen was going to speak?
I thought he alluded to the fact that he might speak at the very beginning for a few minutes before the dinner starts, but it wasn't a statement of fact.
It says Richard and Claudia Bushman will be good, as well as for when President Jorgensen opens the presentation with a few comments. And Sister Jorgensen is also expected to participate. So it looks like he's going to be the opening MC.
And the Bushmans?
No, Brother
Who
Jorgensen will speak first.
Who are the Bushmans?
Oh, it's in this letter here. They're going to be speaking to us tonight. He's an author, has written some books.
Who's ever on OnePlus, they need to mute.
Yeah, if you've got two items up and going, then that's going to cause that feedback.
That could have been my phone then.
Yeah.
All right, here's my sister and I got rid of her.
Okay. So the Bushmans aren't connected with Italy. They're people who'd written a book or something. Okay. I didn't know what the connection was and why we would be honoring the Bushmans and having them speak at this interim reunion.
Richard Bushman is a very famous historian about Joseph Smith. He wrote Rough Stones Rolling, and he's just recently written a book about the gold plates. He's done a lot of writing. Also, Sister Bushman writes as well. She's also very amazing, and I think they're longtime friends of the Jorgensens, is my understanding.
Oh.
So we're really looking forward to hearing everybody who speaks.
I wonder if he's going to talk about Kirtland. I'll raise my hands when he does.
Maybe so.
Yeah, we're actually 11 miles from the Kirtland Temple, where we live currently.
Paul, can you give us an update of what the anticipated schedule is for tonight?
I can't give it into a play-by-play, but we're going to have an opening prayer. We're going to sing a couple of hymns, one of them at the end. We are going to have dinner starting at 6:30 in half an hour. And welcome. Thank you for joining the Zoom connection, everyone. We will have the presentation from Richard and Claudia Bushman. There'll be a couple of very quick announcements made, one of which is to invite everyone to apply to go on a mission to the Italy-Rome temple, because they need people there. And you know that very well,
yeah,
David.
Lee Curtis has been trying to get us to go over there.
Let's see. But the key thing is the presentation by the Bushmans, and then Dan is going to say a few words. There will be a video presentation by Elaine, very short. She was not able to come tonight because of her health. So hopefully that gives you some ideas.
Is Dan going to speak after the dinner or before?
He'll be speaking after the dinner, but before the Bushmans.
Okay, so in reality, you have a dinner that's going to be taking place from what, for the next hour?
For the next half hour, we're just gathering, and then the dinner will go from 6:30 until 7:30 maximum.
What time is the program? Does the program start?
The program is supposed to start at 7:30 or possibly sooner.
Okay.
Okay, so we could come back on when the program is going.
You can come back in at any time. Don't forget us if you want to leave and come back. And
Thank you so
I'm not
much.
sure if you've been able to see any of the people that have been gathering in the background, but a great group. Hopefully you saw the list of people that were scheduled to come.
Yep.
We miss you guys. I'm glad that we were able to see some of you via Zoom. We're trying to figure out the sound here. Go ahead. What were you going to say?
Thank you so much for the Zoom option. It's really so great to be able to tune in. So thank you.
So that's Janice that just said that, or let's see, Jennifer, Sister Moulton.
Yes.
Great.
Right.
Sister Moulton, what months were you in Italy?
I was there November 71 to March 73.
Will you see if there's the controls for the sound here over here on the side of this pillar? if you could check
Good
there.
50 years
Adjust that there.
ago.
Yeah, it's all been, and I apologize for the distraction. Where every word that you all say is being broadcast into the background, adding to some background noise here. So we're trying to at least reduce the volume, and we haven't figured out the way to do that just yet. It's unfortunate that we don't have time to have, and maybe we will later on, to have each of you that are on remotely to say something. It would be great to hear from the Kirtland Temple. Keith, did I ever send you the dedicatory program of the first church building that was built in the Kirtland area since the saints left? Did I ever send that to you?
No, that would be interesting.
So back in 1953, President David O. McKay came out and dedicated a building that all the members back at that time, worked to build with membership labor. And there was a very nice glossy booklet put together on that from, 70 years ago now, 1953. And I had made a mental note to send that to you, and I did not. That might be something you'd enjoy seeing.
Well, yeah, and I definitely pass it on to our historian that's here that has grown up in this area.
Now that we've spoken about that and I've committed to it, I will get that to you.
Okay.
For all of you
Unless you
online that
forget.
may be signing off, go ahead. What were you going to say, Keith?
I said, unless you forget, we are getting older.
Stop it.
Display volume, but that doesn't change it.
Okay, and the volume was actually coming from this, I realized. So that I've moved over, and now it's not quite so loud. So the cost of this meal tonight about doubled compared to Dan's initial budget, and there was some work to try to see if we could cover the expenses of this for Dan. And we thought we'd just check in with him to let him know that we were doing that a couple of days ago. And he said, absolutely not. This is my gift and Elaine's gift to our missionaries. But then he thought, and he said, so if people want to contribute, what they need to do is write their mission history. And you've heard that request before. So I'm mentioning that to you. You may get a chance to hear that in one of the announcements tonight. But take a moment and write down who your mission companions were, the cities you served in, just as a start. And then if you can think of a particular incident during the months that you served in Italy North Mission and write that down, that would be a real joy to Dan. Okay?
Should we send it directly to him?
Say that again.
Where shall we send it?
Send it to the same email address that you've been getting these emails from. Okay? And there's, so pcartercih@mac.com. Okay. So forgive me, I'm going to let you just kind of watch the group. You can sign off and sign back in. But there's still a few things that need to be set up here. Okay. Thank you all very much.
Thanks.
Jack Roman. Haven't seen you since 1974, boy.
Yeah, I haven't seen anyone since the time I left my mission, hardly. So,
Well, Seeley made concentrated efforts to contact you. I don't know if he got through or not, but we've talked of you many times, all in the positive way.
well, then you had to stretch that a little bit.
Good to see you, my friend.
Thank you.
Benvenuti a tutti. If I could have your attention, we want to welcome all of the Italy North Mission missionaries that have come. We thank Dan Jorgensen greatly for this opportunity of gathering again. We also want to welcome those from his class of 63. Can you not hear me? Or is it too loud? Thank you. It sounds really loud up here. Is it not loud enough back there? Now it is. I will get closer to the microphone. We have many invited guests of Dan's acquaintance that have come tonight too to hear the Bushman's presentation. And we have tables reserved for them up here at the front. Behind this couple of front tables here, then we have tables for the class of 1963, and there are cards for those 3 tables there. And then we have 2 tables over here. We thought the sister missionaries that served with us 50 years ago would like to get together and sit together. So the sister missionaries and their companions that are here, there's 2 tables for the sister missionaries over here to my left. The plan was to start the dinner about 6:30. We will start at that time with an opening prayer, but you're welcome to start taking a seat at the tables here. We had a couple of cancellations recently, so there's, unless a lot of people have come that we weren't aware of, there's plenty of seating. And we just hope that we all have a very enjoyable time to get acquainted amongst all 3 of the groups that are here, the invited guests, the class of 63, and the Anziani and Sorelle that served in Italy 50 years ago. All of us have the great blessing of having Dan Jorgensen in our lives. Can't say anything more than that. He's a wonderful man. Thank you, Dan. He never paid attention to applause, as we all know. A couple of items on the plan for tonight. At some point, to begin the evening, Dan will have a few moments to talk with us. And then we have a short video from Elaine, who wasn't able to join us tonight. And then we'll have the presentation by Richard and Claudia Bushman. We'll be able to sing a couple of hymns in Italian that will be under the guidance of John Seaman. And we'll just kind of go with the flow with all this. So thank you, welcome. Please start taking your seats wherever you'd like. And it's great to have you here. By the way, we do have a Zoom connection here to a number of people that served with us in Italy. You're welcome to come up to an iPad that Darcy Mott has to say hello to people there, or on the computer here. This screen is turned this way, so the people visiting remotely can see all of us in this group.
Wow, careful. Oh, all right. Can I get your attention for just a minute? We're a little bit slow getting started here. We want to move this program along really fast. I want to welcome you all. I'm so delighted that you can all be here. My class is 63 over here, 63ers. A few of us here. And then this Italy North Mission group, which is a marvelous group. We're delighted that you're here. Elaine's not going to make it tonight, but we'll hear from her for a minute a little later. So we've already started eating, but the food still needs to be blessed. So we're going to ask class of 63, Bill Lowe and a good old friend of mine, to come and offer an invocation, and we'll get started. Come on, Bill.
Our Heavenly Father, in humility, we bow our heads before Thee as we come together as classmates and also missionaries. We're thankful for the church that brings us together. We're thankful for health and strength to be able to be here. We're thankful for this wonderful university and for the things it has taught us. We're thankful for the things we've learned that have allowed us to make a living and raise families. But we're most thankful for the blessing that it's given us to learn about the restored gospel and about thy beloved Son and his atoning sacrifice for each of us. We're so thankful for all that we receive from thee and acknowledge thy hand in all things. We're thankful for this food. Pray that thou would bless it, that we might receive nourishment straight from it. We're thankful that we were able to rise safely and pray that we'll be able to go home safely at the end. We're thankful for all that thou hast given us. In the name of Jesus Christ, amen. Amen.
While you're enjoying your meal, Miles and Patty Paul have made the effort to try and get photographs of everybody that came in as they registered and got checked off of the list of attendees. Just quickly, by a show of hands, who did not get their picture taken yet? Miles and Patty will come around and just try and take a couple of pictures. So I think that's a surprise to Patty to hear that. But thank you for all that work, Patty. One right here. And Miles. Okay, so Miles has the camera and he'll be coming around and just checking at each table and making sure that we get a photograph of each of you.
What's your name? Your name is. I understand. Sort of.
Ok, grazie tantissimo tutti. Siamo pronti per cominciare. Okay, we're going to get the show on the road right away. And we're going to start with a special message. Can everybody hear me going in the back? Can you hear okay back there? Sound good? Is that Bruce back there raising his finger? I think it is. Yeah, okay. Good. Randy, he's back there. I can see him. So that's good. So I wanted to say that we're very sorry and disappointed that Elaine can't be with us this evening. She dearly wanted to be here, and she has a very, very brief little message. She's struggling. She has the effects of just aging like some of us do as we age. And so she's got her mobility problems, and She got her energy problems and a little bit of memory problem, but she still is as bright and shining and sweet as each of you remember her. And so we're going to start off with just a little 1 minute, whatever it is, greeting from Elaine before we get into the program. Elder Carter, want to thank him. He's going to make it work.
So I apologize to those that are on remote. You're not going to be able to see this. We'll get this to you soon. Find.
Technology, you know. There we go.
Let's hope with the microphone.
I thought it was okay. That's good. Okay, is this on? Yeah. All right. Well, she sure wishes that she was here with you, and I think she's watching what's going on the Zoom link that we have. So that's all very good. So I just wanted to give a few remarks. I want to thank Richard and Claudia Bushman for coming, being with us tonight and presenting this program. They're real stalwarts and great historians of America. And we're so grateful that they'd come to Provo, Utah, and talk with us all. Let's give them a hand. And we have, you're all honored guests. I won't try to have to announce everyone in the whole room if I were to announce who our honored guests were. I value each and every one of you in so many different ways. We're grateful that you're here. Just a few remarks from me, and then we'll get on with the important part of the program. It's great to see my class of 63 here, Bill Lowe and the two tables here. We have a couple special tables for Sorelli. For those of you from class of 63, those are sisters. And these are some of our sister missionaries over here. Just give them. And I'll tell you something about sister missionaries. When we went to mission field, Elaine and I were very young. And we didn't know that we weren't supposed to have sister missionaries. And there was some feeling back in this is going back into the 60s and 70s, that sister missionaries were a problem. And so we didn't know that, of course, so that was fine for us. But we found that the sister missionaries were our secret weapon. And you can understand why. Because in Italy, when we started our mission, all of you, there were no members, okay? No member missionary work. There weren't any. It was street boards, it was tracting, and when you tracted, two big Americans at the door, and a little grandma during the day looks through the people, wham, she shuts that thing down. These guys are never going to get into my house. But when the sisters would go by with their sweet smiling faces, the doors would open and right in they'd go. And so they'd line up more appointments than the missionaries, the elders could ever take care of. So we call them our secret weapon. And we keep telling the missionary department, send us more sisters, send us more sisters. And we had a good number, and they did such a great work. We're so grateful for all that you did. I'm grateful for what all of you did. And yeah. Those were sometimes trying times. We had to work the hard work. It wasn't easy, and all of you did it. And you did it with your coats on, believe it or not. I still get ribbed about that, but that's all right. I liked you with your coats on. It looked great. You were a gentleman. I can think of sometimes when you took your coats off, like when we'd get 15,000 Book of Mormons delivered to the office, and everybody try and stay away from the office because unloading that van with 15,000 books, and we did this many times. There have been some estimates. Some of you from the office staff will remember, but some of them said we put out about 200,000 Book of Mormons. That's really a lot. And when you think about that, that's a time bomb today sitting on someone's shelf. People generally speaking, don't throw away a book. And of course, the Italians loved our books because they were colored. They had nice bindings. You all were able, when you couldn't get an appointment, you always placed a good number of books because it was a bargain, wasn't it? What was it, 600 lira? I can't remember. It was, I remember the Germans had a bit of a problem with that. You know, we were being supervised by the Germans up in Frankfurt, and nobody else was asking for Book of Mormons like this. And so there, you know, I'd get a little grumpy, and they say, "Well, we can't do it." But I know I'd been on a German mission, so I understood that Roger and I were there together, and so I understood the German mentality a little bit. I got a handbook, and it said, "You will provide Book of Mormon." It didn't say you should or maybe or sometime. And so I'd point that out to those brethren up there. Let's see, open your handbook. What's it? It says you will provide Book of Mormon. And they'd have to order another printing and another printing, and it went on. But it was a lot of fun, and I'm grateful for the great work you did in placing all those Book of Mormons with all those good Italian people. You were the forerunners of great things. Recently, we came back from Italy in August. Was at the temple the second time there. What a great experience. We used to say to the members, didn't we, and the new investigators, someday we'll have temples here. We didn't, I never thought it would happen in my time. And yes, it did. And it's if you get to Europe, be sure to plan your trip through Rome so you can see that Rome temple in the temple grounds. It's absolutely magnificent. I'm grateful for my experiences with each of you. Elaine, I love you all. You know that. And we miss you, and we talk about you, and thrill with your successes and grieve with your failures, which we all have, don't we? Don't we all have successes and failures? And that's life, isn't it? So I'm grateful for you. I'm grateful for all the good things and your good works. And we'll get on with this program with brother and sister Bushman. And we'll hear first from Claudia. Claudia and I are both class of 63 or 63ers. She got a master's degree at BYU in 1963. So we have a class of 63 participants. And I'll just very briefly, if I can find it here, read you a brief bio on them, so you'll know about each one of them. Let's start with Claudia. She's going to speak next. Claudia Laura Lopper Bushman from the old Sunset Ward. We were in that ward together during World War II. A Californian born in Oakland and raised in San Francisco, Claudia Bushman has been mostly an East Coast person since 1952, when she began to attend Wellesley College near Boston. She's since earned an MA from Brigham Young University and a PhD from Boston University, all in English and American Studies. Married to Richard Bushman after her junior year in college, she continued her education and taught at various universities in periods between births of the couple's 6 children. She has been active in Mormon feminism and publication for many years, writing and editing materials about women. She was the founding editor of Exponent 2. She has written, edited, and co-authored and published 15 books and many shorter works. She likes to do special projects in her Manhattan, New York ward. So, Claudia, we'll hear from you now. And following you, we'll hear from Richard, and I'll read his bio before he speaks to us. We're thrilled to have you with us, Claudia. Come up to the audience.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that help up. Just the thing to do to fall on your face before you get to talk. But Dan and I, our families have been connected for many years, off and on in various places, the way people are in the church. It's just wonderful to see people over the years. And that's one of the cases in this situation. Well, I want to ask a question. How many people who, while they were in college here in the class of 63, or while they were on missions, kept journals? Raise your hands. Hi, so I can see. Yeah. Okay, now how many of you are keeping them now? Not nearly the same number. Okay. I am here to preach that you should be keeping a journal. That's what I want to say. I think it is the most important commandment to me, and maybe to others, is a record shall be kept. A record shall be kept. That means your record as well as everybody else's. And I mean, what are our scriptures but the records of somebody written them down? Because the most important thing is that if you didn't write it down, it didn't happen. Now you want to get those records in good shape. So please go home and start keeping your record again. And I will tell you how I think you ought to do it. I think, of course, lots of people keep their records in beautiful journals with purple lavenders smelling ink, but I say keep it on your computer. That's the place you should do it. And what you should do is sit down, start your journal. When you go home, start what this is October, and let's have it be the 2023 file, and start on a page and put October, then put 1, and then write what you have to say. It may be a paragraph, it may be a sentence, it may be a page. Just write what you have to say. I had occasion this week when I was down in Charlottesville to read some of David O. McKay's journal of 1963. There were a number of days where it says, President McKay did not write anything today. But there were others where there was a paragraph and others where there was a long entry. And so some days you have nothing to say, but try and say something every day. I think it is so important. As I said, if you don't write it, if nobody wrote it, it didn't happen. And we want to have our records. Now, I would also say, don't write anything that you will regret. If you have some bad thing to say about somebody or some real complaint, put it on a separate piece of paper and then burn it later. I really don't want to have anything you'll be sorry about be on your major record. That's serious. There are times, occasions I can speak of in my own family. Very unfortunate things were written, very unfortunate feelings resulted. Don't do that. Write positive things. This is a formal document. Okay, now, after you have finished your month, when you finish writing all the October, print it out, punch holes in it, put it in a loose leaf. And then that you'll have hard copies and soft copies. You'll be able to search, you'll be able to copy, you'll be able to add, you'll be able to subtract, you'll be able to change the record, which is a very good thing, and you'll be able to print out a copy of it when you really need it. That's important too. Now, of course, their church headquarters would love to have a copy of your journal. They have a whole bunch of returning missionary journals. They have lots and lots, but you may have some other place that you leave your papers. Many years ago, somebody who was the librarian at BYU came by to visit with us for some reason and said, we want you to leave your papers at BYU. So we've been leaving our papers at BYU for many years. When my grandmother died, put in her papers. My mother's papers, my father's papers are all at BYU special collections. Our papers are there. As we use them up, do various things, we send them off, put them someplace where they will be able to be read again sometime later. Somebody will be very glad to get them. Now, many years ago, I visited my father, and my father is not particularly a literate person, and but he is a strong-minded person. He had things to say. And one of the things he was saying on this occasion was that the chapel that he had built as a bishop in San Francisco, Sunset Ward, which we all know about, was going to be not only brought up to date, but remodeled and changed. And this was a building that had been built with my father's blood and and the small savings of the poor people that lived in that area during the Depression. And it's a beautiful building. We were all proud of it. We loved it. It was wonderful. these so-called experts were coming from Salt Lake. They were going to change everything. He was very unhappy about it, had nothing to say. Well, I knew all about that. It was all he talked about for a year. But as after he talked for a while, I got an idea, and I said, just a minute, Dad, stop. And I got out my little computer. I said, now start over. And just start from the beginning. And he talked slow, and I typed fast, and I got down that story from the beginning. And by the time we went to bed, by the time he was ready to go to bed, I had 3 single-spaced pages. I continued this during the time I was there. And by the time I left, I had quite a bit. And we continued that on for some long time. He did not ever write a journal himself. But having started that and gotten the story of Sunset Ward, which I got from the beginning with all the names, all the dates, I wrote an article about it. It was published in Dialogue. And it's really a very nice little article. It tells us about our wonderful time in Sunset Ward, where we had, a stage and wonderful programs of all kinds. And, it was a good thing. And so that was a very useful kind of thing. And so after I had written that piece, I started going back to my father. Tell me about more things. Tell me about your early life. He hadn't kept a journal at all, but he started dictating things about his life. And I'm going to read you some of it about his mission. And so even if everybody here should be keeping a record, but if somebody that you know and love didn't keep a record, you can still write one for them. So this is my father on his going well. Wait a minute, that's kind of first thing. Yeah, okay. When he was a young man, he was a young man who grew up on a hard Scrabble farm in Utah, the eldest of 10 children. When he was in his late teens, he and his next older brother took off for Los Angeles, where they were going to seek their fortune. They got jobs there and they worked and started a life that was very different from the one that they had lived before. I had big plans for making money. I had a good job with the company, and now I was a property holder. He's bought a piece of land, and he's planning to build a house for his mother. I thought that I would eventually build a nice house for my family. I was attending church sporadically, going to the Matthews Ward, mostly to MIA or Mutual Improvement Association work, participating in plays, dances, public speaking. I did not consider myself a particular stalwart of the church, which was primitive there. The first stake of the church in California was organized in Los Angeles while I was there in 1923. And then after a while, his brother who had been with him went back to Utah to help with the family. And during this time, he was regularly sending money home to his mother because he knew she needed it. I later learned she turned it all into the bishop as tithing, my tithing, because she made the correct assumption that I was not paying tithing in California. My tithing record was impressive. I mention this to support the unexpected letter I got from Heber J. Grant, the president of the church, dated to September 18, 1925. The letter reads as follows. You have been recommended as worthy to fill a mission. It gives us great pleasure to call you to labor in the southern states. The date of your departure is October 29, 1925. You will be expected, however, to present yourself at the missionary home place and to avail yourself of a special course of training. Please let us know your feelings with regard to this call and have your reply endorsed by your bishop. My immediate reaction to that call was completely negative. I felt that the church leaders didn't know me or my circumstances at all, that the whole thing was crazy. Certainly I had no ambition and no desire to go. I was 24 at the time. It was exactly opposite of any of the plans I had made, but I could not put the request aside nor forget the idea that I had been called and that they wanted me to go. Finally, I couldn't sleep or eat. I debated the matter for 13 days, but I knew that if I should build my mother the finest home in Beverly Hills, it would mean nothing to her if I did not serve this mission. My old brother, Ivan, who was with me in Los Angeles, kept telling me that I should go. I finally made up my mind and told my company the surprising news that I was going on a mission for my company, for my church. I was able to borrow $1,200 on the lot he had bought to build a house for his mother when he went on the mission. And so then he goes off. Read you a little more from it. Let me see. This is how it was. We entered the mission home in Salt Lake City the first month it was open, being in, I think, the second group to go through. I was sure at the time that this mission was ill-advised. I was not a missionary in any way and had agonizing feelings about going. On top of that, a medical checkup led to them taking out my tonsils. I was miserable the whole time. Visiting general authorities gave us instructions on how to hold a fork and tie a necktie. Some of the young men had never been away from home or off the farm. They had a lot to learn. I was older than all but one other elder. I was 24 then, and I had had a great deal of experience in the world. 12 of us were to go to the southern states. They called me to be the group leader, which was proof positive to me that the whole thing was crazy. All the others were better prepared than I, and they were all eager to be missionaries. Among the difficulties was getting to the mission field. We had our train fares paid out, but we were in share cars for 4 days. We finally landed in Atlanta, Georgia, the mission headquarters. We were met by 2 missionaries who escorted us to the Terminal Hotel in Atlanta, where we stayed for 3 days because President Charles A. Callis was out of town. Every day I fought with the idea of getting back on the train and going to Los Angeles. It seemed so crazy to be out there on that assignment. The 3rd day, the elders came back to tell us that President Callis was in town and would see us. They instructed us to put on our dark suits and our most conservative ties because these things were very important to President Callis. I put on a very light suit and my loudest tie. Despite the urgings of the elders, this'll do it, I thought. He'll send me back home. We were ushered into the president's house. He took our names and looked us over very carefully. He spent the whole day interviewing us and assigning us to various aspects of the work. I was saved for last. Finally, I was called into his office, and I can see him yet. A short man with a big head, a mass of gray hair. He had already been a mission president then for more than 20 years. He served a total of 27. As I came into the room, he was staring out the window and he didn't turn around for the longest time. Finally, he turned and asked, "Elder Locker, do you pray?" "Oh, sometimes," I said. "Well, let's pray." He prayed as I had never heard anyone pray. He asked the Lord to take the rebellion out of this young man. He asked him to help him to understand. He prayed a long, long time. In his prayer, he told the story of my life, saying things that I thought no one could know anything about. But he knew. He said that he realized that I was more experienced and capable than the other missionaries, and that because of my experiences, I had advantages over them. He said he expected more of me than any of the others. He spoke of the things that he had in mind for me, that I was to take over one of the district leaders. And because of my abilities, I would preside over that area. He pressed all the buttons. After that, I was his boy. I was ready to do anything he asked. From then on, it was quite an experience. Isn't that so? Great mission. Thank you very much for the chance to be with you to talk to you today. Bye.
Let me briefly read this bio of Richard's. Claudia, we're grateful for you and your family. I remember your mother and father, and how much my parents saw you. Richard Bushman was born in Salt Lake City in 1931 and brought up in Portland, Oregon. He received his undergraduate and graduate degrees from Harvard University and taught at Brigham Young University, Boston University, and University of Delaware. He retired as Governor Morris Professor of History at Columbia University in 2001 and was visiting Howard W. Hunter Chair of Mormon Studies at Claremont Graduate University from 2008 to 2011. He's the author of a number of books, including Joseph Smith, Rough Stone Rolling. He served as co-general editor of the Smith Papers until 2012, and in 1997 founded Mormon Scholars Foundation, which fosters the development of young LDS scholars. He's now co-director of the Center for Latter-day Saint Arts in New York City. With his wife, Claudia Bushman, he's the father of 6 children and 20 grandchildren. He has served as a bishop and stake president, and currently is patriarch of the New York Single Adult Stake. Richard, we're thrilled to have you with us. We look forward to hearing about your new book, Joseph Smith's Gold Plates.
I've heard the story of Claudia's father in the Southern States Mission many times, and it brings tears to my eyes every time I hear it. It's a fabulous story because he was really a rough, tough guy. Remained so at the end of his life, but a big heart and a marvelous person. It got me to thinking about my own mission, which was a wartime mission. I was called in 1951. So that's the middle of the Korean War. And I would never have been able to go if I'd lived in Salt Lake City, because they had a sharp limitation on the number of young men who would be allowed to be exempted from the draft to go on a mission. In Portland, there weren't any other missionaries around for the church, and I was given a clerical exemption. I was going to be a minister of the gospel in New England. So I went off. It's a wonderful place to go. I loved New England. It was at a time when the number of missionaries in the mission continually shrunk as this Korean War draft just drained away all the potential missionaries. So for all of New England states, from Connecticut into the maritime provinces up to Newfoundland, was our mission, and we had 50 missionaries for that whole region. I was asked to help supervise some of the missionaries, and the mission president gave me a car, gave me the keys to the car, and sent me out with no companion. There I was, driving around on my own. We were just that desperate. But it was a wonderful experience for me. It really cemented me to the church. I had 2 years of college before I arrived. And during that time, I was always active, but my faith in God corroded. I wasn't sure there was a God. I was sort of agnostic. Just didn't seem to be quite enough evidence that there really was that being. So I arrived without a testimony. When my version of Sir Jalaper's story was when the mission president said, "Do you have a testimony of the gospel, other Bushmen?" I said, "No, I don't believe in God." And or I said I didn't know there was a God because it was an agnostic. I wasn't an atheist. And he didn't get rattled at all. He just said, "Well, here's a book I'd like you to read, and tell me what you think of it." And to put me on a train and sent me to Halifax, Nova Scotia. And of course, the book was the Book of Mormon. So for 3 months, I asked every question I could think about it and tore it up inside and out. 3 months later, he, as President Vaughn, came north to Halifax, and I was asked, along with all the other missionaries, to state my feelings, and I bore a testimony of the gospel. And I've never really changed since that time. I've always never felt any inclination to leave the church, to go inactive, or to doubt the gospel. I'm sort of a believing person by nature. I want to believe. I love believing. And so I've just always remained faithful to the church from that time to this. I have spent my life as a scholar of early America. I was trained as a historian, and my special period that I covered was from the early settlements of North America through the early years of the Republic, through the Revolution, into the Jacksonian era. I sort of chose that era because I thought what I want to do is to understand the culture, the politics, the social order of the world Joseph Smith was born into. So I really, I wrote a lot of different books on the subject, and with that aim in mind. One I wrote involved Brother Dan Jorgensen, because I became very interested in farmers. Basically because the Smith family were farmers, and I wanted to know their world. And so I decided I'd write a book on farming. And though, I had to deal with the records, the farmers leave a huge number of records in courthouses and everywhere in the sun. But I wanted to get acquainted with farmers because I became interested not just how farms worked, but the culture of farmers. How did their families operate? What did they think was valuable? So I wanted to talk to farmers. So Dan Jorgensen, who, as you know, is a farmer, and brought together a group of ranchers, farmers down around his house, invited Claudia and me down, and we had dinner with them. And I still remember one of the participants saying how he went off to college and he enjoyed college well enough. But when springtime came, he wanted to be behind the plow, and he just couldn't live without that. And I realized how farming gets in your blood. You just feel it, you need it. And other people hate farmers. They grow up, it's just too much work and they want to leave. But there are those who just can't leave it. They so adore it. And what this resulted in was a book which I call The American Farmer in the 18th Century, published. And Dan, this is for you. Thank you. When I was in the phase where I was really not doing Mormon history at all, it was early American history, I used to talked to Leonard Arrington a lot. I was part of the group that organized the Mormon History Association, which was really Leonard's baby. And I would ask him the question lots of people ask. That is, Leonard, you've been through all the records, you know it. Did you ever find anything that shook your faith in Joseph Smith? Have you ever turned over a rock and there was a scorpion waiting for you? And he would assure me there was nothing of that sort. Then, after I started writing about Joseph Smith, people would ask me the question, were there any things that you turned up that shook your faith in Joseph Smith? And I would say, like Leonard, no, there was nothing there. It didn't mean that there weren't problems. That is, things that you couldn't quite figure out how they fit in his mind and in his culture. And my, nowadays, lots of people run into things in the history that trouble them. Is Joseph Smith's marrying a young girl? What was the Book of Abraham? Was it really by Abraham or something else? So my view when I run into situations like that is to go right into the heart of it. When I run into a problem, I try to state that problem as acutely as I can in its most difficult form, so I really know what the problem is, and then begin to think about it. What does this imply? How does this come to pass? And that way, I've been able to pick up one thing or another, and the things that are sort of disruptive to some lives sort of get into perspective. Let me give you an example. When I started the first book I wrote on Joseph Smith, called Joseph Smith and the Beginnings of Mormonism, it was the history of the church before the church. It was used to be referred to as the pre-existence volume of church history. And the big problem then was Joseph Smith a money digger? Because there was a feeling among historians as well as ordinary members, certainly the general authorities, that money digging or treasure seeking was scandalous. It was out of keeping with being a prophet of God. And it just must be incongruous. And so when Joseph Smith was put on trial in 1826 for having aided Josiah Stoll to try to find treasure using a seer stone, the people who ran onto that record who were faithful church members said, that is a forgery. That is a phony document contrived by someone who's trying to destroy Joseph Smith's reputation. And so there it was. How was I going to deal with that problem? Well, it so happened that in the larger world of popular culture history, there was a book written about magic, religion and the decline of magic, by an Oxford scholar named Keith Thomas. And he had discovered that religion, or that magic, was part of the culture of the whole society. There were members of parliament who had seer stones and looked for visions in those seer stones. And though this was gradually squeezed out by the Enlightenment at the end of the 17th century and the beginning of the 18th century, it still existed in sort of at the grassroots among ordinary people, and especially in Pennsylvania and in New England. And that around Joseph Smith were not just the Smith family, but all sorts of people who would hunt for treasure and didn't find it at all contradictory with their belief in God. They were Christians, they were Baptists and Methodists, and still went and hunted for treasure. So suddenly, something that once seemed scandalous and totally incongruous for a prophet of God was just part of culture, like looking at astrological tables nowadays. Maybe foolish, unfounded, but not scandalous and not contradictory to a Christian point of view. So it was possible for me to put into Joseph Smith and the Beginnings of Mormonism a story of Smith family treasure seeking, because it was just part of the record. I didn't have to deny anything that was in the sources, and it all sort of fit together into the story of the Smith family development. Since that time, if you read Saints, the first volume in the New Saints series has extended descriptions of the Smith family treasure seeking. It's found in the Joseph Smith papers. It's just become part of the historical records. Doesn't shock us. It's just part of the life they lived. And so what had seemed like a problem, and in a way remains the same problem there was before, is an entirely new perspective and no longer seems a challenge to Joseph Smith's treasure seeking. I want to tell you a little bit more about that, because when I wrote this book, Joseph Smith's Gold Plates, treasure seeking became a very important and startling part of Joseph Smith's records. And Dan, I'm laying it on thick. Here's a copy for you. What I discovered, or I partly discovered, partly it was a matter of a new orientation. When we think of Moroni appearing to Joseph Smith on that first night in 1823 and telling him there's a record buried which he is to recover, it seems like that settles the matter. That, okay, now the prophet has a new calling, a little unusual, but an angel has told him about it. But if you look closely at Joseph Smith's own account of how this happened, especially his 1832 account, which he wrote in his own hand or dictated in his own voice, it's clear he had trouble believing what the angel told him. It would be like someone coming to you in the night and says, tomorrow you're going to jump over the moon. Just tell him you're going to find a record and we'll have to translate it. But it's just incomprehensible. No one he knew in his own experience or in world history had ever found plates on which there was a record which they translated. Can you think of another translator prophet in world history? It was an entirely new role for him. And he tells us that when he went to the hill and when he was denied the right to pick the plates out, when the angel chastised him and he couldn't get them out of the stone box, he said to himself, what I've seen must not have been real. It must have been just a dream. He doubted his own vision. Now, for us, that seems impossible. You see a vision of God. But is it really impossible? Is it just natural that if an angel appeared to you one night, the next morning you would just accept it? If your daughter came down one morning and said, I saw an angel last night, well, you'd say yes, yes, but you would want to check it. And that was the case with Joseph Smith. One of the problems was not only that he had no frame of reference, no previous knowledge of anything that would make sense of this, he had another frame of reference where it made perfect sense. And that was treasure-seeking Lord. Because the treasure seekers believed that these treasures weren't just buried in the ground somewhere, but there was a guardian spirit who stood over that treasure and protected it. And to get at the treasure, you had to elude that spirit. You had to obey its commandments. You had to do all sorts of things in order to allow you to obtain the treasure. So for anyone with that kind of experience, when an angel appears and says there's a gold record in a hill, the thing that clicks into place in your mind is treasure-seeking Lord. There was a newspaper editor who wrote this all up and explained it. And I think if you really want to look at the evidence, that's what happened to Joseph Smith. Because what we learn from him in his own account and in Oliver Cowdery's 1834 account is that as he went to the hill, he couldn't decide, is he getting a record or is he finding a treasure? And when he says, I desired it for its monetary value, he's telling you, I'm thinking like a treasure seeker. He was clicking into that frame of mind. So it's a murky record between 1823 and 1827, very little written, as we know. But it probably took nearly 4 years to reorient themselves to the idea of a record. There was this trial in 1826 when Joseph Smith was accused of acting as a treasure seeker, deluding people by claiming he could find treasure. Joseph Smith Sr. testifies, and he says he hopes that his son will no longer seek filthy lucre, but will be given some higher calling that God desires for him. So I see that as a point where they're standing on the boundary. Joseph Smith Sr. is beginning to see that treasure seeking isn't all that could be at hand, that there could be something higher that God desires his son. And the view of a new mission is beginning to emerge. And by June of 1827, Joseph Sr. is referring to the gold plates not as treasure, but as a record. They're beginning to see there's a history there. And so when they finally do recover the plates after 4 years, they're pretty sure it's not going to be a treasure seeking. They don't even refer to the gold plates never as a treasure. It's always a record. They don't even call them gold plates very much, not even the gold Bible. So that transition took a long time, finally occurred. The second serious problem in this whole story is translation. Translation. Joseph Smith had a little schooling, but he didn't go to what's called grammar school, where you learned Latin grammar in preparation for college. That would be far above him. And it's only those who have that kind of education, a college prep course, who would study Latin. And the only people who would study Greek, or much less Hebrew, would only be professors and students in universities. It was not something everybody learned. The only the thing that was most likely to occur to him if you spoke of translation was the King James Version of the Bible. That was translated by 47 learned men. So here's Joseph Smith in line to be a translator. Again, no one like that. There's no one actually in biblical history who's a translator prophet. It's a totally new role that he has to take upon himself. And I will tell you, as a historian, I cannot explain how he did that. The records are a little bit in conflict, but I think the predominant evidence is that when he received the plates, he did not know he was to translate them. Joseph Knight says that when he came rushing in the morning, had the plates in the Urim and Thummim, that he says, I have them and I want them translated. He doesn't say, and I'm going to translate it. He wants someone else to translate them. Joseph Knight says he's actually more interested in the Urim and Thummim. He says, I could look at them and see anything. But he was familiar with that because he had a seer stone. He learned how you use the seer stone in order to see things. He could find lost objects and so on. So he doesn't really understand that he's to be the translator. So he sends off this copy of some of the characters to the most learned men he could find in colleges, Samuel Mitchell and Charles Anthon, both of whom knew Indian languages. Joseph Smith's getting a plates that he knows is the history of the natives of America. He thinks he needs someone who knows Indian in order to translate these records. And then Martin Harris comes back and says he didn't really get anything of satisfactory. There's confusion about what he actually said, but it doesn't help with the translation. But somehow Joseph Smith reads that as a fulfillment of Isaiah 29, where an unlearned man would translate a book. And the farthest I can go in trying to explain why he would ever translate was he suddenly saw himself in that role. The scripture had prophesied an unlearned man translating that book. And this is the mystery point. Suddenly, within, I don't know, weeks or most months, he starts translating and the words just flow from him. Just suddenly, this boy who has nothing to do with translation, nothing about it, suddenly just starts speaking this language. And, he has this 116 pages of manuscript by June of 1828. Then in July or late June, early July, he receives a revelation, which is a new form of speaking. He speaks for God. The first written revelation is section 3 of the Doctrine and Covenants, where Joseph is rebuked. And he writes down words, he's speaking them, but the words are addressed to him from God. God speaks to him through words that he is actually mouthing or writing down. At that point, you become a prophet. You're speaking for God. And all the revelations that come after that are in the voice of God. It's as if God is speaking in your ear. It's first person God speaking. It's not like Isaiah. When Isaiah says, I received revelation, this is what God said to me. It's God speaking in the Doctrine and Covenants. So that gift comes along in the same span where he becomes a translator. So I don't know what more to say to explain it. I mean, all you can do is say that somehow gifts were given. But speaking to historians, I would say this just remains a puzzle in the life of Joseph Smith. So that's one of the chapters in this book where I try to work out those things, but in a way thrilling to Latter-day Saints. They feel powers of God suddenly coming out of heaven, puzzling the historians because we have no way of explaining all this. And I guess it's a kind of a testimony of mine. So I love the story. I love the prophet, and I was talking a bit about how I regained my faith. I've had it ever since. I've never left the church. I've never wandered. I've never been tempted to break the commandments. I've always accepted callings that I receive. I love being a patriarch. And so if I try to explain to myself why I'm what I am, it's because it's been such a good life. When Claudia and I were asked to teach Mormon studies at Claremont Graduate University, I was taken out to lunch by the man who was soon to become dean of the College of Religion. He was a Korean, a Catholic, very eminent theologian. And we went to, it was a sunny California day, we're outside a beautiful restaurant. We got our orders in, and he just turned to me immediately. And he said, now they just hired me as a scholar. This is a secular university. And he turned to me and said, Richard, how can you believe in Joseph Smith? It was just an absolute puzzle to him how anyone could believe in Joseph Smith. So I said to him, well, I find that when I live the Mormon way, I'm the kind of man I want to be. And that may be the essence of my testimony. I just feel I'm a better man in every way, better husband, better father, better teacher, better scholar, because I live this gospel way. So I'm very grateful that that has been my lot in life. I've certainly enjoyed friendships in the church, and I enjoyed the scholarship in the church. I enjoyed the richness of the scholarship. We've never had as many powerful, insightful, learned scholars as we have right now. And they're doing absolutely wonderful work. And I'm very pleased to be part of that cooperation. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you, Richard and Claudia. We're grateful for your presence and your messages. Thank you so much. And thank each and every one of you for being here. I hope that all of you missionaries stay in touch. No matter what happens, keep going forward. I'm still corresponding with grandchildren of good contacts that I had when I was a German missionary. Can you believe that? So stay in touch with the members. Keep moving things forward. Be positive. Elaine and I love each and every one of you dearly. You know that. And I leave you with my testimony that I know that the gospel is true. It's an abiding testimony that I have always had. I'm grateful for the prophet whom we just heard inside. I'm grateful for his mission. And I love our Savior, Jesus Christ. And I say this in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. Amen. I'd like to ask, is Fred Geddix here? Where is Fred? I didn't see him yet. Fred, where are you? Oh, you're saying the closing prayer. We're going to sing the song Guardati Genti in Italian. Heather Bossart is going to accompany. And where's John? John Siemens. Where are you, John? Oh, here he is. He's going to come up here and conduct the singing. We'll sing it in Italian. If you want to sing it in English, try to do it. And safe travels home. We love you all. Stay in touch.
And not too fast because we've got to do it in Italian. But fast enough that we remember it as missionaries. Yeah. Our favorite song.
Father in heaven, We're very grateful this evening for the spirit that we felt and for the recollection of our memories and our testimonies of the work in Italy so many years ago. We ask thee that thou wilt keep those testimonies alive in each of us, that will bless us in all the things that we do in life and help us to remember the way we felt then. And these things we pray for in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen.
Could I interrupt for just a second, please? I told President Jorgensen when we were talking on the phone the other day that there would be a lot of us who would want to be able to hear a little bit about some of his life after the mission and some of the things that he did. It turns out that he was like an Indiana Jones in the business world, and I would love to have him, he'll be mad at me for saying this, but I'd love to have him share with us his story of when the Russians were on his back when he's working in Africa, and also when the Shining Path came after him when he's in Peru. And so I don't know if he's going to be willing to say it or not, but I think if there are enough of us that kind of encourage him, we might be able to get this as a part of this evening and remembering records from the past. So, President Jorgensen.
I missed what you were saying because I was visiting them. You want war stories?
Well, the stories of Indiana Jones, the business Indiana Jones, specifically, and you can explain it much better. But when the Russians were on your case and how you managed to be successful in fulfilling your job at the time to collect money that was uncollectible, and how the Russians were bugging your phone and trying to get you, and then also in Peru when the Shining Path was after you, and I'm sure there's a lot of others in between, but those are two that come to mind. If you just share those and some others with us, because we don't know all that much about some of the exciting things that you've happened. We think that you are disguising your business life with your ranching life, and so we want to hear the little bit of the business life.
All right. Well, we'll take just a couple. I know it's late, but I'll tell you a couple of stories. Maybe you'd like to hear a couple of stories. I'll tell you first of all that I never set out to be a businessman. I knew that I had to be one if I wanted to buy my ranch, and so I became a businessman, and I bought my ranch. But war stories, that's what Elder Call's talking about. And I was blessed with some very interesting and unique experiences. I had a business in Moscow, Russia for many years. I had experiences in Eastern Europe throughout my life and on my mission, my first mission to Germany. So it was quite exciting. The Shining Path story in Peru, it's very quickly. I spent some time, I was working with a huge Wall Street firm as a special consultant and someone who could solve problems. They thought that a farm boy could probably solve problems that other people couldn't. I'm not sure they were right, but I did solve a few. We had spent many months in and out of Peru. I was down there to Lima a couple times a month for a couple of years, and during the period of the Shining Path. And we worked with a very famous lawyer there who was president of Club Nacional and also president of one of the biggest banks in Lima, Jaime Garcia. I get word just before I'm leaving New York for Peru that Jaime's cousin has been kidnapped by the Shining Path, and they're insisting on a huge ransom, and that Jaime and the rest of the family is endangered, life threatened. And I'm thinking on the flight down, I wonder how this will be. I had a colleague who was, like many people, thought a lot about himself all the time. And we would go down and he would jump into Jaime's car and we'd drive around to the various appointments that we had in trying to solve this problem. I finally just rented my own car and had my own chauffeur. So after this incident, when the Shining Path captured his cousin and held him for ransom, they before my plane landed, they blew up Jaime's garage in his lovely home in Peru. The next morning, Jaime shows up with his chauffeur in his Mercedes, and my colleague ran out and jumped in my car. So I got in Jaime's car. I wasn't about to leave Jaime alone in that situation, but I always sat my back to the wall the whole time we were there. And I think there were guardian angels that were watching over us. Russia was a whole different situation. I fell into Russia quite unexpectedly because of a problem that I was able to solve in the Republic of Congo in Brazzaville. And as a result of that, to make this very short, it's late, I know that, but to make it very short, we were solving the problem. The ambassador with whom I was living at the time, because I got to know him, I was down there so much that he has always had me stay at his home in Brazzaville, said this Soviet ambassador called me today and he'd like to meet you. Is that possible? I said, well, yeah, why? I wondered. And he said, we don't know why. Let's find out. So the ambassador said, okay, I'll invite him and his wife over for dinner. So time comes that week, he comes over to the embassy house for dinner. I had vowed to myself that I would not ask him why he was wanting to meet with me. We had known, of course, that we were being surveilled, that our mail was being opened, that our conversations were being recorded and were being constantly photographed by the Soviet agents. They're pretty sloppy. And so we had dinner. It was a lovely dinner, and afterwards we were having some caviar, and they were having their after dinner drinks, and I was drinking my ginger ale. And finally, the ambassador says to me, by the way, I learned that he had been the ambassador to North Vietnam during the Vietnam War. And at that point in time, in Republic of Congo, there was a war going on in a neighboring country, Angola, which the United States was fighting from across the Congo River, along with the South Africans against the communists. So it all starts to fit into place. And the Russian ambassador says to me, well, Mr. Jorgensen, I guess you want to know why we wanted to meet you? And I said, yes, I'm interested. He said, well, we've been observing you. I smiled and I said, yes, I know that. And he started to laugh. He says, they're not too smooth, are they? But as a result of that meeting, I actually established a business in Russia and had many really interesting experiences. I met many of the oligarchs and had some exciting times, some fearful times, but all worthwhile times. And I attribute any successes that I had to my guardian angels, to those who had trained me and guided me and directed me in my life, and to the spirit which I felt often as I was in those circumstances. So a couple of stories, Bruce. There's more and more detail, but we'll let that be it for tonight. We love you all. Take care and keep up the good work.